Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this joint scrutiny committee. That's the Economy, Residents and Communities, Health and Social Care and Learning Skills Scrutiny Committees. And we're here to look at our Q1 performance report. So going through the agenda, item 1 is any apologies, please, Kath.
Mr. Chair, we've got apologies from councillors Chloe, Chris, John, Liz and Bryn, cabinet members Matthew and Jake, and officers Sharon Powell and Sharon Fruin.
Lovely, thank you very much. Item 2, any disclosures of interest. So this is to receive
Sorry, Chair, could I just add Councillor Sian Cox to the apologies? She's been having problems getting in this morning.
Okay, thank you, David. If she manages to join in, we'll add her on later. Thank you. So item 2 then is disclosures of interest, to receive any disclosures of interest by members relating to items to be considered at this meeting. David, you got, oh no, it's just gone down. So no hands up and silence, we'll take that to mean no. And the same for item 3, any declarations of party whip, to receive disclosures of prohibited party whip which a member has been given in relation to the meeting in accordance to section 78.3 of the Local Government Measure 2011. And again, I'm seeing shaken heads, no hands up, so we'll take that to mean no. Thank you all very much. So the substantive item on the agenda is the Corporate Strategic and Equality Plan, the scorecard for Q1 performance for 24 to 25. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine, I believe, to introduce this to us. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine James.
Thank you, Councillor Angela. So the purpose of the report that you've got with you today is obviously to provide an update as at Q1 for the Corporate and Strategic Equality Plan, which is titled Stronger, Fairer, Greener. The corporate plan is the priority work of the council, and it's driven by the Cabinet's work programme and doesn't include all of the work that the council does. So Q1 focuses on from the 1st of April to the 30th of June of this year, and our corporate plan really details the objectives, actions and measures that will help us to achieve what we've set out to do. As you know, there are 3 objectives within the corporate plan, and we will be going through those one by one, as Councillor Angela pointed out earlier. So on page 5 of the report pack, there is a link to the scorecard that we use to monitor and report progress, and this is published and available on the council's website. But we've also included the measures there that we do use to monitor progress in Appendix A, which is, it starts on page 8 of your report packs, and this also includes the previous 3 quarters as well as Q1 itself, just to provide some comparison. And on page 3, you will note that there are some amendments to several of the measures as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. So I think Councillor Gareth, you wanted to raise some issues about the whole report before we go in it section by section. Would you like to come in there?
Yeah, firstly, in the report, in Appendix A, there's no target. Got no detail about the target for Q1. You've got to go in the CESP to get that target. We've got no comparison data from Q1 this year to Q1 last year in the report. I don't know where I do now. I have found the targets, but they're not the full year. I don't know where you find the full year targets. I've tried and I can't see you can actually pull up the performance of each service on the website. And my biggest issue is I think some of these targets are so loose. If we take number 4, for example, the one that visits the leisure centres, I've actually gone back.
Appreciate that. I think you've made a really good overarching comment there about the comparison data, and I think I've already highlighted to Catherine. I think that year 1 data from last year, Q1, sorry, data from last year would have been really useful to have that as a comparison. But before we go into each individual one,
this is a general point.
Okay, yeah, no problem at all. Carry on then.
Just using number 4 as an example.
Yeah, okay.
Which is the number of visits to leisure centres.
Number 4, yeah.
Okay. Last year, the target for Q1 was 399,392. Actual achievement in Q1 was 473,400. In my mind, if I'm setting that target for 24, 25, I would be setting a target close to the 473,000. But when you look in the document on the web page, it's a target of 403,000.
Right. So your question is about how ambitious these targets are and whether they're set at the right level.
Well, I would actually say, in my mind, because we're now overperforming by 25%, I wouldn't actually put that as a green achieved. I'd question the validity of the target. And that just puts a big question in my mind across the whole report. The fact you've got no original target, actual achieved, all we've got is a set of data, which we've got to do a lot more in
digging.
Yeah.
Okay, valid points. I don't know, Catherine, if you want to come back on that, why it's set out in the way that it is.
I think in terms of the way it's set out, how it is, we can only fit 4 sort of comparative columns together. But if you go beyond that, we have tried, but it's a struggle, and it's tricky, so we can't really go beyond the 4. But note that the target would be useful in the appendices. Obviously it is available in the scorecard itself, but it isn't in the appendices.
Sorry, Catherine, this is a document that's been produced in Word, isn't it?
This one, yeah, but it's taken from the information that we have on our interactive Power BI system that automatically pulls the information through.
So why can't the report be in portrait and you can get 6 or 7 columns in?
It's something that we could explore.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, lovely. Thank you, Catherine. Okay, thank you for that, Gareth. Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise a concern about the length of time that it's taken to come to scrutiny, given that it's a report for the end of for a period running to the end of June, and we're now midway through September. It just seems, we're almost at the end of Q2 now, and it would be good if we could review it closer to the end of the quarter that it relates to.
Yeah, it's a bit like your tax returns, isn't it? They're always done in the past. But Catherine, I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Q1's always a bit delayed due to the August break. So that obviously puts things back, but generally it is a little bit sooner than this.
Okay. So it wouldn't be sorry, Clive, you've got your hand up. You're on mute, Clive, sorry.
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, members. Just coming back onto Councillor Gareth's point about the targets, I think Councillor Gareth has raised an issue which we as SLT will go away and look at and make sure that the targets are reviewed so that they are challenging.
Lovely. Thank you for that. Councillor Gareth.
Yeah, just one point. I promise I'll shut up after this. We never reviewed Q4, the outturn figures. The last report we had was Q3, if I remember rightly.
I actually can't remember, I will be honest.
And I've chatted with Kath this morning, and she said the last one was Q3.
Okay.
So we are most likely 6 months before we had any performance data.
Okay. Okay, so it's really important we do a good job today then, isn't it? Right, members. So back to the report then before you. So it may be the way to tackle this if we look at Appendix A, which is on page 8, and work our way through each of those reporting figures. So objective 1 was that we will improve people's awareness of services and how to access them so that they can make informed choices. And given that we've heard a lot from our residents about not being able to get hold of councillors or officers or whatever, it's clearly an important target for the council. So working our way through there, looking at the data in front of us, can I have your questions, please, on objective 1? So some challenge there. So, I mean, I'll start you off then, shall I? So we're talking about there on point 02, the number of people in Powys with access to preventative digital solutions. And we've got some numbers in these columns that fluctuate. They appear on the face of it to have gone up, but we've got no target monitoring. And I would want to know, why is there no target? And is 562 a positive figure? What are we out of? Who could answer that for us? Who's here? So anybody from the
Helen.
Digital Solutions Department
Helen's
that
here.
would like to?
Ellen? Anybody from Adult Social Care?
Okay, so
we can see Ellen trying to talk, but you're not on mute, Ellen, but we can't hear you, I'm afraid.
I can answer your question,
Can you hear me now?
Angela.
oh no,
Yes, we
Ellen's
can,
there.
Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you.
yeah. Sorry, just to come in, Chair, to say this isn't actually one that's attributed to digital services. I believe this is a social care
Social Care.
target. So I don't know if there's somebody here from social services and may be able to answer that.
We've had apologies from Sharon Fruin, haven't we, and Sharon, the two Sharons. But to answer your question, Angela, if you go onto the website, there's no target set.
No, and that is the question, isn't it? Why not? Because these figures are meaningless without a target. We don't know.
100%.
It's improved, you know, from Q2 at 121 of last year to Q1 of 562. But is that out of 600 or 6,000 or 60,000 or a million? We don't know. So that's very disappointing, and very disappointing that nobody has come along to answer these questions on this department. So I'll go back to the floor. Lucy, with you.
Yeah.
Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. I just was going to move on straight on down to the items of 49, 50 and 51, which are off track.
Yeah.
And really just ask for an explanation as you know to what we know about why they're off track and what's being done to put them on track.
14, where are you there? Oh, you're sorry. Yeah, in objective 1. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Got you there. So we're on page 9, members.
Hello.
So have we got anybody from social services here? This is, oh, Catherine, thank you.
For 49, 50 and 51?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be me. Yeah, so we had a pre-election period, as you know, well, 2 pre-election periods in Q1. So just to give you a bit of context, so these are questions that were asked to people. So when they visit the Have Your Say page to complete a survey or, you know, consultation, things like that, it pops up as an optional thing that they can do and answer these questions. But obviously due to the lack of promotion and so, you know, there wasn't anything really happening in terms of surveys, etc. during that period, and we couldn't promote. The numbers are very small. However, just to give you some assurance, obviously we've looked into where we're at already for Q2, and due to the fact that we've got 2 quite large surveys out as well, the numbers are a lot higher, you know, and they're going to be reporting a lot higher. We've also talked to colleagues over in digital services, and we'll be looking at putting those in other places. So not just in that area, but also on the website when people are visiting the website, in libraries where they can sort of get people more face to face to see what they think in terms of being able to have their say. So we're expanding that out a bit wider. So hopefully, Councillor Lucy, that helps give you some context.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I would obviously, we've been looking at the school transport review, and you know, aware with that although there was a reasonable number of respondents, the consultation actually hadn't been widely advertised on Facebook at all. So it just makes me wonder, even if we were on track and we were getting a reasonable success rate, how does that compare with what we could potentially be getting? And are we setting our standards, our targets high enough?
Yeah, and I'd back that up, Lucy. I would like to know the actual figures. 14% of how many were there? Is it 14% of 10 respondents or 14% of 10,000 respondents?
7.
It doesn't really actually tell. So there were 7 respondents. So it's meaningless data, actually. It doesn't actually tell us anything, really, does it? In the context of the work of the council. So I would suggest that the work that's gone into that has been a total waste of time, actually. Right, over to the floor again. Councillor Allard.
That was going to be my very point around the statistics and the sample size. whether it's significant or, within the margins of error, is clearly a sample size of that out of 144,000 residents, 133,000 residents. It's pretty small. But they have to be from within Powys, I'm guessing. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Going back to it's so important that we do have that fourth column year ending, especially with cumulative numbers. The one that you see with the one that Gareth highlighted at the beginning. It's a cumulative number, and unless you got quarter one figures corresponding, it's impossible to tell if you're clearly on track here. Because it says so, but it's important to have that cumulative, the fifth column, so you got a clear picture. But what my main point was, it's a strange sort of question, really, isn't it? The objective, I should say, to improve people's awareness of the service and how to access them. But does that tell us how accessible our services are, which is more critical for our residents? What I assume that this question or the plan has been through Cabinet and full council and is signed off by everybody, wasn't it? But I've always struggled with that question. When do you, are there review periods, or is there a time you can have a review of the plan at all?
Yeah, it's live online, isn't it, Catherine? It's part of the link was in.
So yeah,
the link was in the document.
No, but I think what you mean, Councillor Alger, is in terms of maybe amending or tweaking things.
The objectives, yeah.
So so a review takes place annually, and usually I think by around January-ish it would be coming through. So we'll be starting to work on that soon.
Okay, but yeah, would you agree that these figures do not indicate how accessible services are? Just people's awareness.
So you mean the wording, Alid, is what you mean? Because I think maybe there was an assumption that if we improve people's awareness and so that they know how to access them, that they can make better choices. But I get what you're saying. That doesn't mean, okay, yes, I know that it's available online, but I'm not online, so I still can't access them. That's what the point you're trying to make?
Yeah, and then it's it's easier to talk about things, physical things. Leisure centres are easy to talk about. The leisure centre review, and it'd be interesting to see the impact of accessibility to a service once the leisure review has taken place and the recommendations followed through. So I always far keener on the accessibility of services to individuals right across the county. Thank you, Chair.
So you would add there, we will improve people's awareness of services and how to access them. Over to you. What's the extra wording you would put in there to make it tighter?
Well, no, it's a simple question of how accessible services are to all residents across Powys.
Yeah, okay. I'm trying to keep notes so that we'll make some recommendations at the end of this section. Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, perhaps just a little bit of a challenge back to you, Catherine. I can't really see why we can't make this a landscape report and add another 2 columns in if we need to. Surely our technological skills can accommodate that for us. It really is a challenge without seeing those full year-on-year assessments previously. And also, can we add another line in against where we're at to show what the target was within that quarter and a cumulative across the year? Because otherwise, like Gareth says, we've got a triple handle list to go back into the website to try and find it and look back at each line, and it just makes it quite frustrating. And then perhaps just that little bit of challenge on those 49, 50 and 51. Regardless of how many respondents you've had, only 14% of them are saying that they're satisfied with the service they've got. So there's a bit of a stat in there that we can use. Now it's not a statistical robust figure. Of course it isn't with just that low number of respondents, but it's showing a bit of a trend already, isn't it? That the people that are accessing our systems aren't satisfied with it. So yeah, we've got more than 3/4 of the people that have responded aren't satisfied with it. So we've, I guess my interest is what we're doing about it. How do we improve
Councillor
that.
Gary, that it's only, as I understand it, it's only one person.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
So
but
the
it's only one person that replied, Clive. That's the point, isn't it?
No,
We don't know.
seven replied.
Yeah.
14% is one person.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of the population of Powys, it doesn't tell us anything, does it?
But that's only one person that said they're satisfied. The other 6 said they're not satisfied. And that's my concern. There's more than 3/4 saying they're not satisfied.
Okay. Yeah.
And we could argue it's not a high figure to work with. Get that, but still, even with the figures we've got, it worries me. So yeah, I'll leave those with you. Thank you.
Councillor Gwynber.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I get really confused with all of this, to be honest with you. I quite frankly think we're operating wrong. We're speaking about respondents, but whenever you look at the key feeders to the report, I don't think we're achieving anything. Surely we need an awful lot more detail. Yes, the residents of Powys are important, but we're in collaboration with so many different organisations and things, and I would like to see more strategic assessment, future trends report, contributions, how we're coping with the Future Generation Commissioner's advice, monitoring Welsh Government on legislative changes, particularly with our social partnership duty. Where are we with PSB plans and objectives? And where are the Public Service Board's wellbeing assessments? I'm really not clear what we're achieving, really, to be honest with you. We're relying on a response from our Powys residents. It's far bigger than this. And as I said, in the key feeders, we're not ticking many boxes. So I really don't know whether we align with some of the things I mentioned. And the other thing is, where are we with financial sustainability? All these things that we're speaking about, where is mention of any financial plans? There's nothing in there. There's not enough detail for me. I'm maybe getting it wrong. I don't know, but that's the way I see it. I really don't see the document right throughout has enough detail for us, because it's not ticking enough boxes, and I think it's failing, to be fair. And when we did Q3, there was similar comments being made there. I really don't. I think we're just doing a tick box exercise, which I'm not prepared to sign off, because I don't think there's enough detail in there surrounding some of the things I mentioned, and I'm only mentioning them things off the top of my head. I really do think there's a bigger picture to paint, and we're not painting it.
Okay, I think I could take on board what you're saying about the bigger picture, but in terms of this, there are 3 specific objectives, and I think there is something to scrutinise here about whether we're meeting those specific objectives in this document. I can see Councillor Petang and Jane have got their hands up.
Angela saying that they are well-being objectives, and that well-being objectives is the big picture. And
yeah,
just to report that what we're doing, it doesn't say if we're aligning with anything else.
No, indeed, I think we can add that.
It says that we're flying solo, and there's all those items in the key feeders, and we're ticking a couple of boxes.
Yeah. So how does this document link into all the other agencies that we should be working closely with?
Well, it isn't just the agencies. You know, we know about the Future Generations Commissioner. Where's the link to that? Where's the strategic assessment of the external environment? Are we meeting their needs? Are we meeting future trends reports? Are we having financial stability? To me, we're not covering enough boxes here. I don't know, perhaps it's just me. That's the way I see it.
It's not just you.
Okay, so I've got Councillor P and Jane Thomas with their hands up. I don't know, were you coming in particularly to answer any of those points? Yes, Jane's nodding. So shall I bring Jane in now?
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you, Jane.
I think just taking on board everything that's been said, and I think what this report is doing doesn't necessarily cover all of those things. So I accept that in terms of Councillor Gwynber's feedback at the moment. So I think we need to take some of that away and just reflect on that as to what we might need to do. I think in terms of the actual report that you're seeing today, it is developed around those 3 key objectives, and services have therefore come forward with the measures that they feel will be beneficial to help monitor that. Now, taking on board all of the questions that are being raised in the comments today, it may be that we haven't quite got that right. So I think it's important for the committee to feed that back to us. And again, we can go back and reflect on that. So this is the first quarter that you're seeing for this particular year. So again, we can look to develop and improve based on the feedback that we're getting from you as a committee. So I just wanted to give that very general overview. Thank you, Councillor Ange.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Gwynfor, your hand is still up. Did you want to come back there?
No, I may come back in some point, but not
Yeah.
at the...
Thank you. Peter, Councillor Pete.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just commenting on 49, 50, 51. Catherine's already indicated that these are linked to people coming onto the website in response to other matters. And it's quite possibly they're either predetermined positively or negatively towards us when they engage. So I think Catherine's point that we need to expand the scope of where people are giving us information about this measure is important. And whilst it's unusual for a cabinet member to suggest a scrutiny recommendation, perhaps you might like to ask officers to come back with a response as to how they're going to expand that scope before the next meeting. But on a wider point, if you look onto the Power BI side of things, there's also some narrative from each of the departmental areas about how they are working to go about meeting each of these objectives. And that may give members a bit more information about the way the council is working and how officers are looking to meet those objectives outside of the facts and figures signed in the report.
Okay. Thank you, Pete. Margaret, you're next with your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick comment supporting what Aled and Gareth said, particularly, and Gwynfor. When I looked, the figures are, you know, maybe are helpful to some respect, but the one question that was in my head, what difference is it making? That's the one that actually came to me. And that's, the figures are important, don't get me wrong, and the progress is really important, but it's what happens to that individual or whatever. And I don't know, you know, Gwynfor was suggesting some ways it could link up, but I think that's the key to anything. Otherwise, why are we doing it and collecting figures?
Yeah, absolutely, Margaret. Totally spot on there. And that's the role of this committee, isn't it, to ask? So officers have clearly spent a lot of time filling data into data sheets, and some of it is presented to us here. But at the end of the day, is there any value to it? Does it tell us anything about how well we're performing? Does it tell us anything about the experience of residents in Powys? And I'm not sure. So we could take, for example, we've talked about 49, 50 and 51, which are red and they're off track, but 52, we've got 93.75% of customers are satisfied with the service they received. Isn't that fantastic? I don't know. How many people replied? We have no idea. Is that good or not? And I don't know if anybody can answer that. Do we know the figures? So no, there's a blank screen there. So anyway, moving on then, Councillor David Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted some clarification about all looking at the same reports, because I'm just getting a little bit confused here, because I do accept there's some shortcomings and I take that on board. But if you're actually using the CSEP scorecard, if you look at the navigation panel in that, you've got the 3 objectives listed there, and there's a measures trend, and the measures trend actually shows quite clearly, you know, exactly what the trend has been, where there's information available against each measure. So I just think it might be helpful if we just ensure that we are looking at the actual scorecard itself and not just page 8 of the report. And there's, as Councillor Pete rightly pointed out as well, there's an awful lot of information following that from each service with regard to the measures within the scorecard.
Okay, so on that front, I don't know, is there an officer here that can bring the scorecard up for us so we could have a look at that?
There's a link in the report itself.
There's a link in the report, but David, there's a huge amount of no data.
Oh yeah, I accept that. I accept the shortcomings.
Even within that fourth button you press. And I also wanted to back Margaret up on what you were saying, you know, so what questions. And there's opportunities for services to respond to that within the narrative at the end of each of the objectives. As Councillor Pete said, but I had a quick scan of that. There's no clear discernible positive things for residents. Okay, there's been a bit of training down here and there, but there is a place to put a really clear narrative of what benefits has been, because that's what this is for, is for the residency outcomes, as Margaret so eloquently said. Thank you.
Thank you, Aled. Councillor Graham. Welcome, Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And just really to back up what's been said, and I appreciate exactly what David said, and there's an awful lot of data if you go through via the link, but I think we are misleading councillors and misleading the public with figures that suggest that 93.75% of people are satisfied with the service they receive. You know, that figure is meaningless without the numbers.
Hang on a minute, Councillor Graham. Somebody's got their microphone on and we're hearing a conversation in the background. Can I ask you all to check your microphones are turned off so that we can hear Councillor Graham clearly? Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry, Graham, to interrupt you.
Yeah, not much more to say, actually, Angela, other than, you know, I think it's meaningless. It's meaningless for the public, and it's meaningless for councillors if we continue to report in this way without the actual figures alongside this information. And the public, don't forget, it's the public that will see that figure of 93% and think, oh, why aren't Powys wonderful? But if you ask anybody out there if they can get through to the right person when they ring in, they'll tell you they can't, including councillors. So, you know, I think there's an awful lot more work got to go into this before we present figures like this in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Graham. I don't know if any of the officers want to come back on that point. No, we're not very active today, are we? We're all half asleep. Councillor Aled, you've got your hand up. Sorry, Aled, I think you're on mute.
I just did as you told me to put things on mute.
Yes. Remember to take them off again.
Sorry, Angela. Yeah, just quick comment really. Would it be possible, you know, on this data to put an asterisk against a figure if it's not statistically significant? Because when you're analysing the data, officers would know their sample size and everything like that. If there's too much of that detail to be put in, possibly just put an asterisk against anything that is statistically insignificant.
Yeah, would people find that useful? Would that be meaningful in any way?
Councillor Aled, we should. I think we should clearly just mark the fact clearly on the record that it's statistically insignificant. And this was a matter which was raised by CLT and SLT. So it's perhaps something that we need to take on board and make sure it's on the face, clear from the face of the document.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't quite know where we go. Oh, Diane, come in and enlighten us. Thank you.
I wonder if I just let Ellen come in first, because I probably am going to jump in and say what Ellen's going to say. So as it's Ellen's area and not mine anymore, I'd like her to have the opportunity to speak, if that's right, Chair.
Yes, please do. Ellen, welcome. Thank you very much.
Hi. Yeah, could I just let the meeting know that I am actually looking for the figures at the moment for the 93%. We have got figures attached to that, and that is the feedback that we get from customers when they contact us in terms of how satisfied they are in terms of their interaction with us. There is a slight difference between the end-to-end process in terms of how satisfied they are with the interaction with us, and in terms of how quick we get them to the point that they need to be. There are slight kind of differences in terms of when a resident gets to a point at the service that there might be at times a little bit less kind of satisfaction, but we're looking at dividing those figures up at the moment. But I am looking at the figures at the moment, and I will be able to update. I can put in chat if that's okay, Chair, the numbers there.
Okay, yeah, thank you if members would find that helpful. So where do we go from here, members? So I'm looking at the scorecard. Obviously went through it previously anyway. And there is a lot of text to back up what's been said, but for me, I think I would like to add, if we can, in the scorecard, where we have the measure and the number, that needs to be referenced in the text as well, so it's easy to flip between the overview and the deeper body of the text below. And if that's there, then I apologize, but I can't see it. So in the bottom bit, what have we been doing during the quarter to support the objective? It's there to support the overall objective, but not the individual numbers. So it is a little bit difficult for those of us who are not using these documents on a daily basis to navigate around it. So that would be one of my comments. Any further questions on key target 1? No, Diane, did you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to come back and overall, I mean, just taking on board the comments that you've made and the improvements to the document aside, I think there was really a question from Councillor Allard as well about, you know, what we're doing to improve the customer experience, and that is overall, isn't it, objective 1, and that's why that objective's there. We know we're not good enough. We know we've got to do lots of work to improve, and I think what each services set out there in the text is what they're actually doing to improve that. Now, we're not at the end of that. We haven't met that objective. We're at quarter 1 here of a long plan. But I think, you know, just picking out something like in digital, where it says the customer experience strategy is being developed, and that's not just for digital, that's looking at the whole customer experience and how we can improve that, and putting a strong strategy in place that helps us to make those step changes. And more information will come in the following quarters of what we're doing and how we're going to improve. I think there's a huge number of changes that we're making across all directorates that will come through. And but I take on board that we maybe need to present that clearer to you all. But just to give you some assurance that all of those comments there from the services are everything we're doing against that objective. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Diane. And I mean, I'm actually reading that one now, and I agree that below these figures there's a lot more information, but I still don't think it quite hits really the point. Got here, customer experience principles tested at Sustainable Powers forums to obtain views and comments. 90% of respondents strongly agree or agree, but there's. What does that mean? 90%, how many was that? So I really think wherever we've got a percentage figure, we have to have what the full respondent number was. 90% of 10 people, 90% of 10,000 people. There's a vast difference. We've no idea what that means, have we? I just don't know how we're supposed to use this document to report back. Alid, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to ask, was it in line with the financial year? I can't remember. It says 23 to 27. Is it for the financial year or calendar year?
Well, we're
financial, surely, is it?
The corporate plan is from 23 to 27, but this here is looking at quarter 1 of the current financial year.
Yeah, so this is the second year of these objectives,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Yeah. So how much of the, you know, what we've done, etc., etc., that's all relating to the first quarter of this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, just 3 months. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, so sometimes, but you know, by the end of this year, we'll have sort of lost track of where we started. It'll be 2 years ago by then, won't it? Really, there needs to be a continuous narrative of how things have changed over the period or lifetime of this plan. But
some of the matters for reporting are cumulative. But yes, as you say, some of them are just that particular quarter.
Okay.
Okay, so nobody else has got any further comments. I don't know how we're going to handle this on objective 1, but let's move on to objective 2 and see if we can't pull something out of this. So objective 2 stated that we will support good quality, sustainable employment opportunities and pursue the real living wage accreditation. And we're starting there at measure 15, which is off track, so not a great start. So any questions here, members? Thank you, Councillor Gary.
Yeah, just I take your point, David. There's devil in the detail in the scorecards online, but actually what I can't see is anywhere that specifically says, particularly where we've got a red target, if you like, so an off target, what the specific measures, as you said, Chair, how we're addressing that. So that's just one general concern, and obviously in this one we're off track on a few, but given the objective clearly lays out a real living wage accreditation, I can't see a figure or a stat that tells us what percentage of our staff, how many of our staff are on the real living wage or above. Are we at 98%, 97%? Working towards the accreditation is great, but I'm sure they've got their own sort of methodology and stuff, but I'd be interested to just see if we're missing a few stats that could help us realise that we're on that journey quite well, because, or you could say one stat is we've achieved real wage living accreditation. It'd be a 0 at the moment, but we should get there at some point. But just clocking that we're not really addressing it in the measures seems it's a clear element of the objective.
Okay, anybody want to respond? No, or we'll move on to Councillor Lucy.
Chair, Paul Bradshaw has hand up.
Oh, sorry, Paul, I missed you. Good, come in then, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm slightly confused there. I wasn't sure what you're talking about number 15 and number 16, but I think I'll respond to the real living wage question from Councillor Gary. The council pays 100% of its staff the real living wage, so it's the entire workforce, and it has done since last April or May, I think, 2023. So it's not reported. It's just a given. The council pays everybody the real living wage. Question 16 is about extending that to use our contracts of where we commission third-party organisations to deliver council services, to extend it to their staff. But the decision taken by Cabinet last year was to look to implement that in the next 2 to 3 years, and that's by next year. That's actually being looked at by procurement, because obviously it's about procuring contracts and the contractual terms. So I think possibly it's kind of a year too early to have that on the corporate as a corporate measure and a corporate score. But that's not for me to speak to procurement for managing that aspect. Thanks, Chair.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Gary? Happy with that?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Now, Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few queries. The first one is there are a number of the measures that don't have a target, and some of them is quite understandable, like the number of guaranteed interviews offered to armed forces veterans, because I can see that you can't, you won't know in advance how many applications you're going to get. But some, like the percentage of recruitment exercises leading to successful appointment on first advertisement, and the number of apprentices employed by the council, I would have thought that we could have an objective for that. We might not meet it, but maybe, but
a target.
Sorry, yeah, for those. Also, I thought it would be helpful to have an explanation. It may be in the larger document somewhere, but 23, 24 and 25, how the targets were arrived at. Because to me, it seems strange that we're happy that only 65% of our staff have good well-being. but we're not happy that 79% feel proud to work for the council.
Paul, would you like to come back in there?
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Lucy's made some good points there, and I've asked since the Q1 performance meeting of officers, I've asked for my team to develop targets for 21, not 22. I agree with Councillor Lucy on 22. That's not possible, but 21 we definitely should have a target for, and I think the turnover rate, there's a turnover one here somewhere. Can't see the number. So I've asked for 2 or 3 more targets to be developed. I think there should be targets there. In terms of the specific points that Councillor Lucy made, the 65% one is a kind of a slight misnomer. It kind of comes across badly, and I look at that and have exactly the same thoughts as Councillor Lucy. That's a question in the staff survey, and there's 5 answers you can make. There's excellent. You know, your well-being is excellent. Your well-being is good. And there's poor and very poor. There's one in the middle that's neutral, which means neither poor and neither good. So it's not poor ill health. When you add that to it, it comes to 90%. So 65% plus 25%. So there's only 10% of staff who feel the health and well-being is either poor or very poor. So it's kind of slightly misleading, that one. The 75% one, I think Councillor Lucy referred to. I'll just go back to the scorecard.
It was the 79%.
Staff who are proud to work for the council.
Yeah, 79%. If we go back to pre-pandemic, it was 77%. And that pride increased during the pandemic. It went up to 80% and 80% last year as well. So 2022, 2023 was 80%. And we kind of set the target at 82, and we set a kind of a challenging target. But we seem to have plateaued at the kind of the level of pride that people think. Now, 79% is still good. And I think perhaps the target is just being set too high. So what I have done is I've gone into the land of Google and tried to find out what the kind of accepted target is across the UK. And 79% does seem to be good. It's certainly better than a local NHS in Paris. They're kind of raising their score. And it's certainly better than the general level of engagement in the NHS UK. So it is 79%. We're still reasonably positive about it, but it's not up to our target. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Does that explain for you, Lucy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucy. Councillor Allard.
Thanks, Chair. It's just like a bit of a moan about the actual objective itself. It's a really inward-looking objective. It's all about the council and not the services we're, not about the residents out there. It's talking about the real living wage, where there's people on minimum wage paying council tax to enable us to pay the real living wage. So why is it only 3 objectives, and one of them is so self-centered, looking at the council itself? Just a passing comment.
Paul, did you want to come back on that?
I put my hand up and then took it down because Councillor Allard said had some comment. But I think it is worth saying the council is also part of a Mid and West Wales group of like-minded employers who want to try and get to a position where the county of Powys and the whole of Mid and West Wales pays the living wage for every employer. So we want to become a place called a living wage place. And what that does is it treats everybody in the county the same if we can get there. And obviously there's a boost to the local economy and there's a boost to the place. So yes, the council pays it to its staff, to their staff. Yes, Welsh Government provides funding for it to be paid to our kind of registered care staff in third sector care settings. And yes, we want to try and do it through our commissioning in about a year or so from now through procurement. But beyond that, Councillor Allard is quite right. We want to look at everybody who works in Powys and try and get to that point where everybody pays the real living wage. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's got to be said that Powys, on average, are one of the lowest take-home pay areas in Wales. From Thames, which is only Glen behind us. So, you know, that's what really impacts the well-being of our population is the average take-home pay.
Yeah. So that must be applauded then that the council are working to that target to try and improve that. But yeah, but the question is,
yeah, no,
could
but
we
you're
do
only talking
more,
about
I
the
guess?
council public services, not the wholly local economy.
Thank you, Councillor Allard. Councillor Gwynver.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is something similar to developing Councillor Lucy's point, really, and just a general point again. Paul gives some clarification and assurance in relation to Councillor Lucy's points, but I would like to see an improvement framework document just to justify what is being said, to give me the clarity that we're in the right place with this, because we need to know that there is a system in place, and he said in collaboration with others in Wales. I need to see that, and we need to see that improvement framework so that we can sign these things off. The one thing for me in this is that in relation to workforce, I'd like to see some comment from trade unions. That would give me a good assurance that we're on right track. And yes, the devil's in the detail. I'm clicking links, but I don't see anything. So I think an assurance or a comment from trade unions would help me with that understanding where we are with this.
Do we work with the trade unions, Paul? Is that something the council does?
I can't quite remember the right phrase, but across Wales there's a kind of a joint social responsibility with the trade union, social partnership. So we do meet them regularly. We do work with them. Everything that we do, they know about it. So there's no surprises. And the trade unions here, you know, I've worked all over the UK, but the trade unions here are generally very, very supportive, very positive, and they work well in partnership. So there's no issue, I think, in terms of their perceptions. But the councillor who just spoke does make me think, you know, from your kind of scrutiny perspective, is there a way we can kind of keep them in the loop somehow? So maybe it's something that myself and Catherine could think about and look at outside of the meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. I can see Diane has just put her hand up. Were you wanted to come in there, Diane, on those particular points?
Just really to answer Councillor Allard again, in terms of the wider economy and what we're doing in that aspect, whilst it might not say in this specific objective, but what we've been doing is...
Oh, sorry, you've put yourself on mute.
Apologies. We've been collecting baseline data just to understand, you know, of the employers, are they paying real living wage? What are their aspirations for the future? Obviously, the armed forces guaranteed interview, etc., is looking at the external factor, but we really we know anecdotally what people are saying in terms of wages, etc., but we don't know for sure what people are paying and how we can actually set ambitious targets to improve. So that's what we've been doing at the moment. And that will be reflected as we go on and update this objective. So I just wanted to give some assurance that we are working on that behind the scenes. Thank you.
Okay, that's really good to know, because it's all part of the big circle, isn't it, as been mentioned. If people are earning a decent wage, then they're spending a decent amount of money. That's helping keep the local economy vibrant. It's helping people pay their council tax. It's an all ongoing circle. So, you know, as the largest employer in the county, we have that opportunity to influence and set the standard, isn't it? So, yeah. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's just a couple of questions around number 40 and the number of apprentices employed by the council, whether Paul might be able to answer this. I'm disappointed to see that there's no target monitoring taking place here, because I was certainly under the impression that going back a year or two ago, we did set a figure of the number of apprentices that we wanted to employ as a council. I might be wrong, but I seem to remember that figure being set. And I'm also interested to know how we compare with other councils on the employment of apprentices. Are we carrying out any benchmarking against other authorities, Paul? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Paul, over to you.
Yeah, I think, Chair, if it's question 14 we're looking at, I'll just go back to my screen. It's okay. So I'm just struggling slightly with these screens. So if it's council,
Yeah, 40 about the
40.
40.
I think it kind of works well with question 15. So question 15 is about new apprentices, and that's the one I think is possibly more meaningful, because the other question is just a manifestation of what happens at question 15. It's bringing the new ones in, it increases the number. So we've got a target for new ones. It's 15 this year. So it was 4 in the first quarter. I think it's 5 in the second quarter. The concerning thing that jumps off the page at me is it's coloured pink or red. So we got to none in the first quarter. But what I was going to say, Chair, is it's not a kind of a thing that's easy to predict. And we've got a target of 15 for the year. We've got no doubt we're going to get to 15 for the year. It just doesn't fall as 4, 4, 4, 3. It's just not neat and tidy. What I know from looking at today's kind of information is, I just want to give you some reassurance. Today's information is, if you bear with me, just trying to find the right email if you don't mind. Yeah, we've recruited 5 so far. We've got 2 currently out to advert, which we expect to recruit 2. We might actually fill 3 of them, because one of the adverts is for 1 post, but if we get 2 good people walking, we'll take 2 on. We've got 2 to go out shortly for labourers, 2 labourers, and 2 for dom care roles. So we're quite confident in the not too distant future we're going to have 11 or 12 apprentices in post, and that'll get us to the 15 certainly by the end of the year. Why that's more important is the other question where it shows us 32 and 22. They're just the ones being replaced by the new people coming in. Mm. So people leave, Graham, the ones that started 2 years ago, they're leaving now, which is why the numbers are dropping. We managed to start, I think, 24 last year. Last year was a really excellent year. It was quite surprising. They'll start to drop out and be replaced by the new 15. So I think it's healthy. Disappointment in this quarter 1 shows red, but we will get there by the year end. Thanks.
Can I ask a supplementary to that, if that's all right, Graham, for me to butt in there? I'm just wondering, of the apprentices that we take on, do we know how many see their apprenticeship through and possibly, and go on to work full time for the council?
I can find out, Chair. I've seen it in the last council I worked for, and I think it was something like 95% of them either came into our direct employment, went on to employment in another employer, or went back to education. So they didn't go back into NEETs. I'd expect it to be similar here, but I'd have to go and check the figures, Councillor Davis.
Okay, I think I'd be interested to know that, because there's a cost to recruitment, isn't there, and starting people up. So it would be useful to know if we're getting that value for money in that longevity with those. Are we handling it right? So that might be a future paper that would be interesting, Paul.
It is worth saying, Chair. Just whilst you're talking, I just recollected something. What we're doing here is by and large we're taking them directly into real jobs. So they're being brought into vacancies. So they're not in an old type of apprenticeship where you do 2 years and leave. You're actually being appointed to a role with the council. But the idea is we need young people, we need new staff, and we bring them in and keep them. But I can get you the stats. I'm sure it's going to be really, really high, because they're actually in jobs. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay.
And have we got the figures, Paul, compared to other councils on how we're performing?
Benchmarking.
We could ask them, Councillor Graham. We'd have to send an email around the 21 councils and just say, can you please let us know, your numbers. So I could do a piece of work to get that. Thanks.
I think it's something that's useful to know how we are doing, really, because the figures, as we're seeing them there, don't reflect how well you've said we're doing, I don't think.
Yeah, no. I'll get the information, Councillor Graham. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks,
Councillor Allard.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just a query on third quarter achieved in 23-24 was 32, and first quarter achievement in 24-25 is 32. Are those the same 32 then?
I think Paul's just explained there's a slight turnover.
Yeah.
So why is
if an
32?
apprentice is, you think, oh right, you're questioning the figure.
Yeah, it'll be a number will have left. it's just the current total number of people we've got in apprenticeships. So the number must have left, but you know, it changes.
Councillor Allen, you'll see from number 15 that the number of new apprentices was nil. So I think you're right, they are the same 32.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Catherine.
No, it was just to go back to Councillor Allen's previous point about when he mentioned about objective 2 and the wording and that it was quite insular, looking inwards. So it was just to point out that when the corporate plan was being developed and put together back in March 2022, there were workshops with a wider group, so not just cabinet but other members, etc., to develop some of the actions and objectives, etc., that have gone into it. So it's just to say that was a collaborative approach. So that's where they came from, the 3 objectives that we do have.
Thank you.
And you did say previously that this is reviewed annually?
Yes, so the objectives themselves obviously are there, but in terms of the actions and what we're doing, that's all reviewed annually and we'll be starting soon. So please, any suggestions, send them through to.
And it may be now that we're sort of in that second year, we're the first quarter of the second year, that this is a really good time now. We're reflecting on this and asking those questions. How useful is this document? What is it telling us? And what is the impact on our residents? So it might be right that now is the time to review that and reword it, possibly tighten it up, set the targets a bit higher. So will that be a session for all members, or how will that work, Catherine?
If we could take it away and discuss, and we can let you know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or representatives of each group or committee or whatever, but yeah. There's clearly a number of people here in the room who've got some really good ideas of how this could be improved. So it'd be nice if those could be sort of taken on board, isn't it? Okay, so that's objective 2, and I've got no more hands up. Are we sure that we've asked all we want to? We can come back at the end if there's anything anybody else thinks about, but shall we move on now then to objective 3 and see what we can learn from what we're being told here. So objective 3 was we will work to tackle poverty and inequality to support the well-being of the people in Powys. So how well do you think this reflects what we're doing? How are we performing? Any comments, any questions? Some of you have been very quiet. I'm sure you must have some queries that you'd like to bring to the officers. No, you're not helping. You're not making this job very easy for me today, are you, members? So you've all got the papers. You've got the objective there and the measures below them. Thank you, Lucy. Would you like to come bring your question? Did you hear the relief in my voice there, Lucy, when you put your hand up?
Again, Angela, it's really to do with, in part, with the lack of targets for some of those figures. You know, I can see why some of them are left as annual targets, but I don't think there would be any harm in having quarterly targets. For instance, in the number of new homes created by bringing back empty properties. You know, it would be good to have an aim there in terms of the numbers that we would like to have. Also, no target for child absolute poverty rate. Is that, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes rather than looking at the document at this moment in time, and I can't get the right measure up.
35, Lucy.
Yeah, 35. So yeah, no target there. And also perhaps rather than having a percentage, it would, or alongside the percentage, it would be good to have actual numbers.
I think throughout the document that would be useful, wouldn't it? Wherever there's a percentage figure, we need to know what that is in real terms to be able to make a judgment of whether it's good or not.
And again, it may say somewhere in the notes, but you know, something more about what we're doing to actually reduce the number of homeless households, because it's all very well having these figures, but they don't actually tell us what we're doing positively.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Lucy. Sorry, I just lost my screen then. Councillor Gary.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just picking up on some of the worrying ones that I see, whether they've got a target or not, but the child poverty ones, I'm sure, are going to worry all of us, aren't they? There's some huge numbers in there in a rural county.
So you're on number 36 there, 4,868 children living in absolute poverty.
Yeah, and we haven't set a target. I know it's very difficult to, but perhaps we should, because that clearly is a hugely worrying figure for all of us. Wales is now highest rates of child poverty across the UK. That's deeply worrying. That's sort of set and ingrained in us now, and is only ever going to get worse unless we as local authorities and everyone begins to tackle it. So I want to know how we are going to tackle it, and if it's a target, and at least we've got something to work towards. I assume it's sort of new data we're capturing if we haven't had previous data for it, or it's a new target for us, perhaps, or not target, but a new monitoring element. But yeah, just really concerns me, and has to be massive area of our focus. We see in the previous objectives that the numbers of calls to child social services is absolutely vast, and arguably that's a sort of an outcome of people having to live in poverty, and particularly child poverty. So yeah, what are we going to do about it, I guess, is my blunt question, but I know that's not really a question for today.
Well, I don't see why not. I can see that Matt and Councillor Peter have got their hands up, but I can also see Sharon is here. I don't know, Sharon, if you want to make any comments on those particular ones about the child poverty.
Hi, Chair.
Hi.
Thanks for bringing me in. I think you've raised some really interesting points there about targets, etc., and setting that. And I don't know if Anwyn wants to come in as well, because education lead on the kind of poverty strategy and agenda for Powys as a whole, but it's very much a collaborative in terms of all services and agencies working together to try and reduce poverty. Obviously, as you raised, it's a growing concern across Powys, but not only Powys, the UK. And I think it probably should have a target, but how we kind of work that target out might need some consideration to bring back to you in terms of what that could look like, because clearly you want to be able to scrutinise the work that we do to make sure that it's efficient and effective, and it actually is reducing poverty. And it's only right and proper as members that you do that. And that's one of the forums. This is a forum for that kind of discussion. So I do take the point on the numbers and the data. I guess, Chair, you raised some interesting points earlier around percentages and numbers and the meaningfulness within all of that. So again, I think that would be something that I would take away and look at to see how we could present that information in a meaningful way that you could actually then scrutinise to make sure that those objectives are being met, and that ultimately poverty is being reduced to the point of, because you'd want that to be zero, I think, from a value base and all of our interest in terms of a poverty strategy. We want that to be as close to zero as is possible, because then we know that children's individual needs are being met. But yeah, there is a strategy. Education lead on that. So I don't know if Anwyn wants to come in and talk a little bit more about that, but definitely take your points on there being a percentage or a number-based figure that you could kind of look at to then scrutinise to see, how effective we are in terms of that.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Anwyn, did you want to add to that?
Thank you very much, Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair. Just want to add that, as Sharon has said correctly there, that we do have a strategy around reducing the impact of poverty on our learners' outcomes. So that's a national priority there, but we also have a priority across Powys and working with the Mid Wales Education Partnership. I know that I have reported to Learning and Skills Scrutiny about the work of, we call it RADI, which is reducing the impact of deprivation. So that's a really big priority that feeds like a golden thread through every part of our work, so that every question we ask our schools looks at, so how does that look for children on free school meals? What are you doing about it? How are you supporting? And of course, the other big part that we do is supporting the communities. It's not just the learners, it's their families as well. And that's a very big part of our work of our community focused schools as well. So like Sharon has said, we'll look at those data, but it is very much a theme that runs through all our work.
Okay, thank you, Anwen. I can see, Matt, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come in on this specific point?
No, sorry, Chair, it was just to pick up on Councillor Lucy's 2 points on 31, sort of number of homes created by bringing empty properties back. And Andy's on the call as well. So although the figure is showing 0, just looking on Power BI, I think we've achieved 1. But I think now we've got some data there. I'm picking up on Councillor Lucy's point on a target. I think myself and Andy can take that back and look at putting a target figure in there. Obviously, the higher the figure, the better. But again, we don't want to set ourselves up to fail, but something that we will take back and report in terms of future performance. And then on point 37, number of households, you'll see is 292, but just for perspective, the target is 284 on the number of households that are statutory homeless. Andy will have a bit more detail, but the team are doing a load of work in terms of how we can improve homelessness throughout the county. Ideally, again, we would have that as low as possible, but they are looking at a number of things about reducing voids, because so much of it links between the number of homes that we produce. Obviously, looking at modular builds. So we're hoping, as we get a grip of this figure will reduce now over the next few months. So I don't know if there's anything, Andy, you want to mention? Sorry, Chair.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely good. Thank you, Matt. And obviously those of us on the ERC are probably a little bit more aware of the work that's going in the housing department and how all these things interlink. And I know that you have got an officer now dedicated to empty houses, and it's going to be interesting to see the impact of employing that officer, how many houses are coming back into use. So yeah, Andy, did you want to add anything at that point?
Yeah, if that's okay. Empty properties, we generally go for an annual target of 25. That's because it can take an inordinate amount of time to bring an empty properties into use, and you can be stymied at the last minute. So if I give you an example of one long-standing empty property, we managed to get this property empty for years. Somebody was going to buy it, bring it into use. They were refused a mortgage because the property apparently was on a floodplain. The property is at the top of a hill. So, what do we do there? So we are doing that, but we do. It's absolutely critical piece of work. We do have an officer on this. That officer does have an assistant, but I'm afraid that assistant has just had to go on sick leave. So it is really, really important to us, because I think empty properties are a waste. But I speak from experience of having done the job. It can be painful. When you try to find out the owners, when you find that the owners are keeping them empty for a variety of reasons, not all of which have logic behind them, it can be a real challenge. If I turn to indicators 34 and 37, which relate to homelessness and related there, we are very much driven as much by demand, which is often out with our control. So, the more house prices rise, the more wages fall, more people find themselves homeless. Landlords still, under the Renting Homes Wales Act, private landlords can still implement no-fault evictions in Wales, even though they do have to give 6 months notice. I would just caution around modular housing. This is the temporary interim accommodation, often characterized as shipping containers, which were in fact used quite successfully in Brighton quite a few years ago, need exactly the same planning consent as permanent housing. So if you've got a site that you're going to build permanent housing on, you might as well get the planning consent for the permanent homes and build those, because those homes, the root cause of homelessness is a lack of housing. So the more housing you've got, the more you can tackle with it. Modular's ideal for what I call a meanwhile site. So, for example, I think it was Cardiff did it on an old gasworks, which was going to be used for more industrial use. So if, for example, we had a site that was zoned for a supermarket or a factory, but the investor wasn't willing to run with that for 5 years, we could say, okay, let's apply for a planning consent, which would have to do all the same things we have to do for permanent housing, to put the modular on as an interim use pending its permanent use for, as I say, commercial use. But generally, if you can get planning consent for modular, you can get planning consent for permanent, and you might as well build the permanent and get it in there, because permanent council housing at the moment, it generates a surplus for the housing revenue account. So it helps sustain the council's landlord role, which accounts for more than 10% of the council's total budget. It offers safe, secure, it's homes for life, you know, basically, as long as the house is there, if the person wants to live there, it's there. So that's really what we're trying to do. At the moment in our new build program, which you'll see at indicator 28, I've just checked the figures. Since we started to build council housing again, which was about, gosh, how long have I been at Powys? 6 years, about 5 years ago, after it was stopped in 1992. We've completed 122. We have 32 on site this year. We've got 32 out to tender, and our upcoming pipeline, and I always stress with pipelines, it's a pipeline. You know, some of that's dependent, for example, upon phosphate restrictions being lifted by Natural Resource Wales. We've got 333 council houses in the pipeline. Our target is 350 by 2031. That's the target that was set for us by yourselves, by members. So I'm happy about that. And if I could just comment on indicator 33, homes in Powys, that's more a management indicator than a performance indicator. We operate in Powys an open housing register, so that, you know, we don't operate a restricted one. Anybody who feels the need can apply and join. Now, not everybody's a priority, but it does help us understand the housing market. So that's more a management indicator. So there is a lot going on as regards homelessness. The Enhanced Homeless Service project to build 4, well, 2 are instant access 24/7 triage units. And the other 2 are for those people who come to us as homeless, but are not ready yet, or aren't able to sustain a future tenancy, but may, after a period of time with support, or may, after a period of time, we come to the view with colleagues from social services that they will need supported accommodation forever, is looking for sites. Now, we've got 8 units. We're hoping to come to a deal with Barcode to take that forward, and been discussing about a couple of other sites that we may take that forward. There is no lack of will to do that. Capital has been awarded. It is finding sites. Yeah. And the time it takes us now to take a site, from finding a site to handing the keys over because of the regulatory requirements placed upon us, is about 3 years. That's what it's taken us, with a fair wind, to develop a field or a brownfield site so people can have their front door keys. You know, it's like kind of double what it was when I started. And I know I'm old, you know, and I don't want to hark back to the past, but that's where we are. So it's not that we're not trying. Crumbs, you know, we've got from nothing, you know, we've got 122 council houses built, 333 in a pipeline, and 64 either, well, in construction or on tender. So we're really beavering away, and our housing associations are also beavering away, building as well. So we've got a nice mixed bag there, providing homes. Our problem is we don't have enough housing. Population has grown, households are smaller, and we have not built enough. And it's not our fault. The royal we, society, all of us, have not built enough homes over the last 30 years. So I hope that answers any questions.
Yeah, that's very good, Andy. I think you've given us a real broad overview, and I think for me that explains how interlinked all of these things are. People need really good quality homes that are affordable and decent jobs, and then the children are settled, they'll do better in school, and everything's linked and linked and linked. Councillor Graham, I know you've got your hand up, but I've got a few officers with their hands up. Would you be happy if I bring them in so they can answer what we've had so far? Thank you. So Catherine, you've got your hand up.
Yes, so it was just going back to the child poverty. You know, we have 2 measures looking at the percentage and the number of children in poverty that we've got here. It was just to note that this is an annual measure. It's a national measure, so the information and data comes from DWP, Department of Work and Pensions. So it was just to note that, really, so that we only get it annually.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. That explains that one. Okay, and Councillor Pete, you've got your hand up. You're on mute, Pete.
Like I did as I was asked. And I was going to talk about housing in the absence of Councillor Matthew, but I was also going to talk on child poverty and just draw your attention to the narrative around free school meals. As many of you are now aware, free school meals at primary is no longer elective / means tested. But within the time that we are looking at, there has been significant work on ensuring that pupils that would be eligible for free school meals under the old measure are still being identified and therefore being picked up for learning grants and other measures that measure unlocks for them. And it's worth looking in the narrative under finance, where it has been identified significant numbers of people that have been helped, both in free school meals and also in the wider population, to the extent that that service has identified around £500,000 of extra benefits and resources that Powys residents are entitled to, but weren't necessarily claiming. So in terms of bringing money into the authority and ensuring our residents are accessing the funding that they are entitled to but might not otherwise be claiming, we have got a reasonable level of success there, and that's something that is not in the main indicators, but is within the narrative.
I know that's something our schools are working quite hard on, isn't it, to encourage their parents to access all those extra support avenues that are available to them. And I know the council's cost of living webpage, there's a lot of information. I personally use that an awful lot to signpost people to make sure that our residents are getting everything that they need, that they're entitled
absolutely,
to.
because although free school meals are now accessible to all at primary age,
it's the extra bits, isn't it?
The extra
grants,
bits are still there. But also for the council, the more people that are identified as being entitled, the more money we get in the revenue support grant to help support those individuals. So
it's
any
important
parents
that we've got them
watching this,
signed
I
up.
would encourage them to continue to sign up for that entitlement, because it helps us as a council support them as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for that. And finally, gone now. We had, oh no, sorry, there you are, James. You've moved around my screen. I can see Councillor James Gibson-Watt, our leader, had his hand up. So if I could bring James in, and then I'll come back to you, Graham. Thank you for being so patient. So James.
Well, thank you, Chair. First of all, my sincere apologies for the difficulty I had getting into the meeting, and I didn't think I was going to make it, but I'm glad I have. And I apologise to Graham and Aled, who I see ahead of me in the queue, and I hope they don't mind you calling me in earlier in front of them. I just wanted the issue around child poverty, which in a sense, and the whole anti-poverty agenda is linked to the objective we have of making Powys an exemplar employer and a great place to work, a great organisation to work for. I think this, Gary's right, Councillor Gary Mitchell's right, that those figures are pretty stark and deeply worrying. But actually just, I suppose, reveal what we all probably know is that levels of income in the county are extremely low. And the best thing the authority can do, apart from the limited amount of direct action it can take on in these areas, and there are things that we are doing and can do that will help. But the biggest thing we can do is to try and get the economy stimulated, to try and attract employers to pay to come into the county, and those who are here already to provide better salaries and wages to their employees, to upskill the workforce, to enable that to happen, to improve our education system. All of those things all run together, don't they? But it is, and I think the figure is a stark reminder to us as members, just both about the need for action, but also the scale of the task that we have in front of us. But this is not an issue for local authority alone. It's an issue for national government. It's an issue for a whole range of organisations. But getting the economy into a better place, both locally and nationally, is absolutely key to this. I just thought I'd make that point. Thank you very much for bringing me in.
Thank you very much. Graham, thank you very much. You've waited very patiently, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. No, that's fine. It was a key issue, wasn't it? I just wanted to take us back to number 29 and a question for Andy, really, on acquisition of homes. If I'm reading this correctly, we achieved our target last year of 10. My question to Andy is really, can we go above that figure of 10? Have you got the option to do that if the right properties are available, or are you stuck with a budget that really holds you back in that? Because in my ward in particular, you know, we have over 440, I think, people on the waiting list for homes. I personally point out to Andy if I see any in my ward that are coming available and will be suitable, and I have done today as well. And can councillors be helping you more, Andy, with this by pointing you in the right direction for properties? Thank you, Chair.
Good question.
Okay,
Andy.
yeah. Because the housing revenue account is there are no borrowing limits on the housing revenue account, which does not mean I'm going wild with the council's credit card, buying lots of stuff. But basically, as long as a property pays for itself within 60 years and generates a surplus, ideally, but we have a 60-year payback. So the payback is the debt that we take on, all repairs, maintenance, management over those 60 years, which is how council housing used to be financed years ago over a 60-year time period. We'll buy it. So we set a budget, a provisional budget, but we are within the housing revenue account able to buy more. If more properties come up and they pass muster in terms of being viable and they're in areas that we need, in theory, there is, you know, unless, you know, we have prudential borrowing, which applies to the whole council, and Jane's here, I'm sure, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but in theory, the sky is not quite the limit, but if they're good deals, we can go for them. So, you know, we just have to obviously watch the overall, because council borrows its money in one. But yeah, we're not restricted as such. We may need to come to members and ask them to increase the budget, but the housing revenue account is a self-financing operation, as you know, and we do have quite considerable reserves, and we do operate prudently. You know, I would not buy a property with a payback of more than 60 years, because after 60 years, you've got serious works. That's how it works. It is great for people to send us properties, but what we can't do, we can't say, a neighbor of mine or a friend of mine or somebody I know is selling a property, could you buy it? They have to be advertised on the open market, because we have to be seen to be open and transparent, because you could say, you know, housing bought that property because the owner of that property is a friend of somebody who went to school with. Can you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
We
so
have
on
to
that
be
front, Andy,
clean.
is a council registered with the estate agents?
Yeah, we do
so
everything.
They send you through what
we're
they
looking
deem
all the
to be,
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Pete's made a comment there in the chat. Sorry, I
haven't seen that. Let me have a look.
He's saying that we need to be mindful of skewing the market. If we end up purchasing too many properties of a particular type, it could risk creating a bubble and excluding residents from purchasing their own. But I guess by having that on the open market, you know, that's the best way to do that, isn't it? And buy into
that is a really good point, because the last thing we want to do is distort the market. Particularly, we're buying the cheaper properties. We're buying the properties that the tend to be ex-council houses, because we know what they are, and what we want to do is standardise repairs, maintenance, to reduce costs. But we do not want to distort the market by taking properties out, because it's already hard enough for people to become homeowners, particularly young people, and we don't want to do that. So we do tend to spread it thinly across, you know, so we cover all the areas. You know, 10 or even 20 properties probably would, you know, not distort the market. And the other thing with us is we do tend to we're quite tight with, we're quite prudent with what we're willing to pay. But absolutely, the very last thing we want is to take more homes out of the market for home ownership, other than, you know, we do have households who will never own their own home, and who couldn't afford to rent privately. If you're getting those
reports from estate agents as properties are becoming available, then you'll be having that across the county.
Yeah, and we scan, you know, the usual websites that I'm sure we all do from time to time, at Zoopla and Your Move. You know, we do have capacity issues. I like to have the properties checked by clerk of works and a housing quality officer, so I make sure what we buy is not a liability. You know, and that's the other thing as well.
No, they need to be homes for longevity, don't they, for the residents?
Yeah, and also we don't have shed loads of money to spend on them. You know, we're not in the fixer up, doer up when you might buy a home yourself with your first time home and stay with mum and dad for 12 months while you do it up. We're not in that position.
No, we need it to be rented out as soon as possible.
Got to start paying back the debt.
Lovely. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for that. Graham, are you happy with that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Allard.
Thank you. My point was around the buying council houses. That discussion until the very end made me feel really uncomfortable because of additional competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Council really should be focusing on building houses where the market is broken, where a site is too difficult to develop or not commercial to develop. You are talking about 60-year paybacks. People's mortgages are nowhere near that long. It's just an unfair competition for people who want to upgrade their houses or the first-time buyers.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? Getting it right and making sure we got enough homes for everybody. Yeah.
Well, I think it's wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Oh, you don't think they should be buying them at all?
No, I don't really. But
okay, interesting.
Personally, I think you should be selling council houses and having that turnover and building new houses. You know, the houses are there; they're not disappearing. And but that's just my view. Just back to the poverty one. And this is a measure of absolute poverty, which is not quoted so often in the media. They talk about relative poverty far more than absolute poverty. What is the definition of absolute poverty? Education do have a commentary there. There's not much differentiation between primary and secondary school. A lot of that is focuses on primary school. And once you go to secondary school, those impacts can be even greater on the performance of that child through learning. I know you need to get the early years right as well. But, you know, at 18.8 or something % absolute poverty, it's absolutely shocking, that is. And it does go back to the dependence on powers on low wage economy. You know, one of the lowest in Wales, and we all know the usual suspects both in that economy. So can somebody give me the definition of absolute poverty?
Yeah, hi, Councillor Allen. We'll just look it up now and let you know in a few moments.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine, for that. Okay, we'll come back to you, Alid, when we have that answer. Councillor Jeff, welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, you all right?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Just on Alan's point there now, I agree with him. I think we should be building, well, I think we should be building houses, small houses, that can be extended in a couple of years and selling them straight away at at cost or just above cost, as long as we wipe our nose, keep people coming in the bottom of the market. That's what we're going to do. But anyway, my original question is to Andy. Did I hear him right when he said that the council houses that we're building can be offered to people from outside of Powys? Did I hear that right?
No, I don't recall saying that.
Right, I got that wrong. That's fine then.
Sorry, no. We have Homes in Powys is our housing allocation policy, which is agreed by members. We have to have an allocations policy. It is focused, on people who are from Powys. That it is local connection is an important part of that. That's not to say in some instances we might let properties for people who come from outside. We have had cases of hard to let properties when we've run out of Powys people. So you're better off having somebody in there paying rent. But we are a local, local authorities do tend to focus on their local communities. And as some of that's 25% of the land mass of Wales, we've almost got like 4 local authorities have got 4 area teams. So no, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't give any.
No, I'll put it another way. That out of those 122 that we've done, how many are let to people from out of Powys?
None, as far as I know.
None.
And we don't treat new build properties any differently than existing properties. So when a property is built and handed over, it goes into the pool with all the others. So everybody gets a fair crack of the whip at whether it's a new property or an older property. And it's like a car, isn't it? Once you drive it out of the showroom, it ain't a new car anymore.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
we'd like to be fair to everybody. It's based on the needs in the community where we do that. There are some communities where there is a pressing need for council housing where sadly we just can't build at the moment or build at all. And that's where we need to start thinking as we develop our local development plan, how we allow, particularly in villages, it could be the difference, 3 or 4 houses in a village, could be the difference between the school closing, things like that. So it's not my area, but it is Diane and Matt's area because we're all in the same directorate. And, there is this sense of, housing isn't just about big, massive estates. It's also about, okay, just a little bit here will actually tip the balance in the right direction.
Yeah, well, I'm 100% behind you there. I see these new house estates in a town where they're building 50 houses, and I'm thinking if every little village had, like you say, 3 or 4 or 2, make all the difference.
Well, the local development plan is out for consultation at the moment, and that's the very place to do that. It's due to be changed, I think, 2 years' time, is it? Or is it 3 now? The goalpost may have used. But Jeff, I would encourage you to have a look at that for your area and
Okay.
respond to it. Yeah.
Cheers, thank you.
Yeah. Andy, you've got your hand up. Did you want to come back in
Just
there?
one other point. It's not just our local plan. The Beaconsfield, for those members from south of the county, they too will be looking at theirs soon. So, yeah, just so
there's much
well.
sort of interconnection between the two there in the south of the county, isn't there? Yeah. Okay. So I've got no more hands up. So that was objective 3. So I want to say thank you very much for those members of this committee that have been very vocal in their questions and their comments and their criticism, quite right, of some aspects of it. To the members here today who haven't spoken, has anybody got anything they would like to bring forward? Anything for clarity or anything we've missed? Really want to encourage you all to input to this today. No, tumbleweed across my screen there, nobody. Okay, so I'll go back to the officers then. Is there anything else that you would like to add on any of the objectives here and anything in the report? No, all happy. So portfolio holders then, your last chance to speak or be silenced. Have you got any comments you'd like to add? No, this is a miracle for me chairing that we're going to finish ahead of time. So we'll draw out of that then, if everybody's happy and agree with me. We've got some questions really about how the structure of the document and tightening up the detail in it. Catherine, you've put your hand up. Did you want to come in there?
It's regarding, I was looking up at the definition, wasn't I?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Catherine.
Property. Yeah, so it looking up the parliamentary definition is when you have income, so someone's on an income less than 60% of the median income, so that what the medium average is in that area. So just so you know.
So the medium average in the area, not nationally.
Yes, thank you. I did
in your area.
sort of Google that. I was slightly surprised. Not you, Catherine, but other officers couldn't say that straight away. But so what is the medium income for Powys, and relative poverty, the one that's quoted in medium, or that's just below the medium, with income below average, isn't it?
Do have a report on our Wellbeing Information Bank about average household income.
Okay, yeah, no,
so I can share that with you if that would be
that'd be
useful.
helpful.
That was from a few years ago now. I don't know, Anwen or someone in the poverty task force, if you have more up-to-date information. But it does show not only for the whole of the county, but it also it's based on CACI data who do that. You know, but it shows the differences across the county as well.
I thought that it was continually being updated and not outdated data.
Not that one, no, because the data that we did have was a prize that we won as part of a research award that we had from LARIA a few years ago.
Okay.
You'd have to buy it, which
disappointing, to be honest.
£4,000.
Sorry?
If you wanted to update it, it costs £4,000 per data set.
Okay, so if nobody's got any further questions or comments, I'll try and sum up what we've said, and please come in if you think I've misunderstood here. But I think what we're saying, so the first thing came from Councillor Alid, that you'd like to change the wording, and Catherine has told us there is an opportunity there on objective 1 to include that it is accessible to all, and the way that they can get in touch with this data or something along those lines, but I think we'll need to be involved in that word changing. we're all, I think, in agreement that we need the actual figures wherever there are percentages, so that we can see the data set, the sample size that we're talking about, to see how useful that information is. In some cases, we'd like to see slightly more ambitious targets, and we talked about those as we went through. And then where else were we? And then Councillor Gwynborough is very keen. He wants to know how this document links to the other agencies and other strategic assessments. And there may be a way, is there a way really, I suppose it's a question, that you can link this more closely to other documents. And we would like to see more columns. So I think it would be really useful for us in this circumstance if we'd have had the Q1 from last year. So there are some targets here that may have seasonal variation. So it would be useful to know for target 1 this year, how does it compare to target 1 last year, as well as how it's performing over a period of time. And then what was the other column that you were asking for, members? I forget now. Have I missed anything that you can remember? I'm turning to you there. Sue McNicholas. Councillor Sue, come on in, Sue.
Thank you, Angela. We talked about timelines as well, Chair, didn't we?
Timelines, that's right.
Yeah, because although the officers did explain it was because of the summer recess, but I think, you know, we should be a little bit more on par with the timelines.
Yeah, we would like to have this information in a much well, quicker, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, was there anything else I've missed there, members, or are we happy with that? And is that of any help to you, Catherine? Can you take from that, and can we improve on this document so that we can keep ensuring that it's a worthwhile document that gives meaning to the work of the council and lets us know what's happening?
Yeah, thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, in that case, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you especially to those active members today. Really appreciate the work that you've put into this. I know we started off with quite a negative sort of attitude to it, but I think we did get out of there in the end some useful scrutiny, and we've given officers a little bit of work to do. So thank you all very much for coming, and have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.